Welcome back to Ballroom 2, everyone. Our next talk is from Ian All. He's talking on LUCR-3, Cloud Clepto, and SaaS-y scattered spider shenanigans. Good work. I'd like to thank our sponsor, TraceBit. TraceBit deploys cloud canaries or honeypots for intrusion detection. They've built something quite novel that leverages Terraform to scatter interesting resources, think S3 buckets, IAM roles, secrets manager secrets, around your account to catch bad actors. If you have questions for this talk, please save them for the end. We'll have about 5 minutes at the end. Please welcome Ian.
That we call LUCR-3. That is just our fancy name for who you probably know better as Scattered Spider, or Octotempest, or the various other names you see up there. LUCR-3, for us, if you're not familiar with our naming standard, LUCR is our financial threat actors, and this is our third graduated group in there. And that's what we'll be talking about today. You probably noticed some bingo cards out there. Right now, the way we're doing this is anytime I do I stumble, a bingo ball is going to be dropped out of there. I'm going to call it out. If you win, yell out bingo, regardless of what I'm doing in the talk. All right. A little bit about me. My name's Ian. Maybe know me better as Tech Defense. Been in the industry roughly 20-ish years. Spent most of that time at Mandiant doing incident response work. Now over here at Permiso doing that. Last year, I launched Permiso Survivors at Forward CloudSec here, and that is a little hobby of mine. So if you want to play some poorly drawn pixel art versions of me and my team going against some cloud baddies, that's what you need to go ahead and play. And hey, the first person that wins, I'll make you an avatar and put you in the game. All right. Cool. All right. I'm going to go quick on this part. We got 20 minutes to go through this, so I'm going to be quick on the CTI side and get more into just the tactics, the techniques, the procedures. But if we have any CTI folks in here or any of my woo-woo buddies out here, feel free to hit me up in the back afterwards, and we'll talk through a bit more. But overall, attribution is really hard for this group. Attribution gets confused all the time. AlphaV, Black Hat, Scattered Spider, not the same people, even if there are some of the same personas involved in each of those groups. So big thing to note there. I would say if you're interested in the CTI side, outside of talking to me back there later, Jake Nicastro at SleuthCon last year did a great talk where he talked about kind of the difficulties of attribution and used this group as the example for that. Super awesome talk, highly recommend. What you should know, young, brazen, opportunistic attackers with financial motivations, but also sometimes doing it for the lulz. All right, so that's the who. Some consistent themes that we see when helping companies respond to this attacker is, I guess first, they're smart about who they go after. They're targeting their personas. They're not just going and buying random creds. They're making sure they're going after the people that have the types of credentials that they need to get into the environment. So who is that in your modern cloud environment today? Your identity admins. That's like number one persona I see them going after all the time, identity admins. After that, sorry for kind of everybody in this room here, it's security people, right? We often have elevated privileges in environments. Sometimes we whitelist our own activity, and they get the added benefit of keeping tabs on what we're doing as we're responding to them. And they will. They'll join those Teams channels. They'll sit in your ticket queue. They'll go get on your systems that you're using for threat hunting and run some queries themselves. So they're not opposed to doing that type of activity. And I guess what made these guys super special is they're not afraid to pick up the phone. Anytime they run into a problem, they just call. They're not trying to do technical troubleshooting. They'll just call the help desk. And oftentimes when they call the help desk helps them even a little bit more. Right? Call the help desk and like, oh, let me help you get on the VPN. Your machine's not on the domain yet. Oh, no. Let's go and add your machine to the domain too while you're there, right? So they get a little extra along the way. A lot of GUI tooling going on. Very little malware used, at least on the identity, on the cloud, on the SaaS side. When you get on-prem, they do a little bit there, but it's all like classic things that you've ever seen. A little special thing on the on-prem side is they do like to use your own infrastructure to deploy rogue EDR agents. So that's kind of a fun one, and then use the live response features of those EDR agents to deploy ransomware in some areas, do some target data theft in other areas. So pretty cool things there. Super opportunistic. They like to watch what you're doing. All right, I need a bingo number.
Let's get a few.
All right, yeah, get a couple ready, and I'll be right over. All right, so high-level overview, initial access through the IDP. That's how a modern attack's working. When people talk about cloud attacks nowadays, they're missing a lot of the picture. They're like usually just talking about that AWS portion or just that Azure portion. That is, unfortunately, not how it works. Initial access is through your IDP. Everything's so interconnected. After they're in through your IDP, it's all about learning enough about your environment to be able to carry out their mission, right? And how are they going to do that? Hopefully better than we're doing bingo balls. But they're just going to get into your SaaS portal and run queries just like your general user does, right? They're not doing anything special here, and that's what makes them special, I guess, right, is that they just look like a normal guy doing things in your environment, normal admin doing what they do. Use SaaS to learn enough about your environment to carry out their mission, and then carry out their mission depending on the type of target in that IaaS layer, or maybe in your CI/CD pipeline if they want code signing certs, if they want source code, things like that. So let's get into one of those. But first, a couple of numbers. N35, O72, and G60. This idea played out much better in my head yesterday. All right, so let's talk about the IDP side. I'm going to be quick on this. I know everybody here loves AWS and Azure and that stuff, but I want to touch on the other components of this. So always sourcing from residential proxies. Again, very targeted about the personas that they're going after. They're going to buy, coerce, bribe their way to creds very often, sometimes sending up targeted phishing infrastructure to harvest creds. If you're interested in tracking that phishing infrastructure, come see me afterwards and I'll walk you through how to track a couple of their phishing kits. Very interesting stuff there. We have a couple people out in the crowd. I don't know if Chester's here, but Chester, also great at tracking infrastructure, so hit him up too. I'm sure he'd love to share. So lots of great ways to go ahead and get creds. Once they get them, getting past MFA, simple SIM swap, oftentimes push fatigue. If you're even at like, hey, hardware tokens, you've done your best to get around it. Unfortunately, that doesn't stop them again from just calling somebody and say, hey, for $2,000, can I have your creds? Can you just push the button for me? Right? And very often they would just do that, right? Again, that's what makes them a little bit special. Once they're on that other side, that process was painful. They don't want to do that again, so they go and register their own MFA device next. All of your modern IDP solutions, you could have more than one device associated with your identity. By default, Okta's 5, Azure is also 5. I'm sure Ping has a similar number. But this is where we start getting into some of our actual hunting opportunities, right? How many people have more than one phone in your environment? You're going to have a couple, but probably not too many. How many people switch platforms? I've only ever seen these guys register Apple devices. I've never seen them register an Android. How long do you see, how often do you see somebody go from Android to Apple or back and forth? Around the holidays, you see a little bit of it, but not too much. It should be a small enough data set to hunt through. One I love, and I don't know if Sylvia is here somewhere, but everyone's got to have the latest and greatest, right? I got a 15 Pro Max somewhere in one of these pockets, right? I'm doing that. How often do you see somebody with a 15, the next device they register is a 10, a 12? No one downgrades, right? These are, when you're not dealing with easy things like malware, these are the types of things you got to think about for detecting these types of activities in your environments. What's just a little abnormal from the standard usage?
G52.
B52.
G,
that
52.
one. And then also, how many people even share phones, right? So these guys will compromise a dozen identities. They don't have a dozen phones sitting in front of them. They just have a couple. So they're just going to use that same phone, registering it over and over again. So look for that common DT hash or device ID, depending on what platform you're on, for looking for that. Cool. That's the IDP side of the house. Let's talk about SaaS for a little while. So I think, to me, the most underrepresented area for detection out there right now is the SaaS environments and just the search queries that people are performing. No one's looking at them. I don't know why. They show intent like no artifact, like other artifact actually does. These are scatter spider search terms. These not just one environment, this is multiple environments I've seen these search terms done by them. I highlighted one there for you for Snowflake to give you an idea that, hey, they also like to go after that data. A quick plug, we did release a tool called Yeti Hunter. Thank you, Bleon, somewhere in the crowd, for getting that done super quick for hunting through Snowflake data if you're in a situation where you're worried about that recent Snowflake attack. So open source tool to go look at that. But yeah, I mean, just take a look at some of those terms there. Those are terms no one searches for legitimately. If someone's searching for AKIA in your environment, they want creds, right? A couple up there like threw me off at first. I'm like, why is somebody looking for Shodan API keys? Like we all have like a lifetime subscription at this point through Humble Bundle. So like, what's the deal there? But it's not the key that they want in that one, or at least I suspect it's not. It's they want to know the script that you're using that references that key, so they know how you're doing enrichment, right? So it's stuff like that that they're really going after there. Outside of just the search terms, which again I think super relevant for looking out for, other detection opportunities you have. People who are creatures of habit, right? I click into the same set of apps every day. Bingo.
61.
All right. I click into the same set of apps every day. If someone clicks into a different app than they normally do, maybe they've never clicked into that app ever, that should be a red flag for you. So watch for people who are clicking in to things they have been employed for 3 years, they've never clicked into GitHub. Why are they suddenly clicking into GitHub?
G46.
Yeah, maybe we should do some least privilege as well. Cool. And then defense evasion, I'm going to skip it because I'm taking too much time. All right. What you guys will probably enjoy more. AWS side of the house. What does it look like when they get into AWS? First, they're doing everything with GUI tooling. So they're sitting there in a web browser in AWS Management Console for almost all the activity that they're performing here, except for S3. They like using S3 browser for S3. A lot of bad guys like using S3 browser. A lot of good guys do too. So anytime I see it in an environment, I always run it down. But highly recommend you guys do as well. Like two of the groups that we've announced recently, GUEvil, LUCR-1, and LUCR-3, both really love using S3 browser. So they're using GUI tools. They do enumeration, probably the way you would do enumeration if you got into an account. Right, so they're doing role assumption. They're in Okta. They click on AWS. They've assumed a role. They chose a great person for it because they're going to get the types of creds that they need. So now they're admin access, through role assumption. They've MFA'd. Everything looks great from your stance, right, as a security person out there. And then they just go to billing. What are you paying for? All right, you put a lot of money in Lambda, Dynamo, RDS, whatever the things are that you're spending the money on. Are the things that they care about more. So now they go click into each one of those. What kind of tags are you using? When you're creating EC2 instances, do you use a consistent name for your keys every time? Okay, they're jotting down notes along the way so that they can emulate what you're doing the best that they can. So enumeration, billing console. They do like to use SSM as well. Again, kind of like we spoke a little bit about how like using Intune and SCCM to like deploy those rogue agents. Well, in AWS, I have SSM, right? In SSM, I have a native script called a software inventory gather script. So they just run that on every instance. When they do run this, a thing that I've noticed about however they're running it particularly is they set it to run every 30 minutes against all EC2 instances. So it's not just run once and be done. Every 30 minutes it's going. I think that's accidental.
I-27.
Right. And another.
I-24.
Sweet. All right. Cool. So SSM to do some of that stuff. You can also just do arbitrary scripting with SSM as well. So just heads up there. Maybe the most impactful thing that they do in AWS environments, in my mind, is the credential harvesting piece. Secrets Manager is often used by organizations to store credentials that they're going to use programmatically. And oftentimes these are creds that you don't have in your normal management process, right? So these are creds like your business-to-business VPN connection string with your partner, your Salesforce authenticator, things like that, like things that don't get rotated very often. So they love to touch these. The way they touch them, though, is a way I never see anybody do it legitimately. They spin up Cloud Shell. And then within Cloud Shell, they're just for looping their way through get secret value on all the secrets that they've listed. Interesting thing there, obviously there's now a batch get secret value. That's a new thing. I haven't seen them use it. I won't be surprised if I do, though. So rather than having to call them one by one, they could just go call them all.
N38.
It's like a voice from above. I really like it. So yeah, and then hey, the cool thing about Cloud Shell, and if you're wondering how to determine if Cloud Shell is touching Secrets Manager, in your user agent, there's a string that is indicative of Cloud Shell. So look for that user agent and an event source of Secrets Manager, and you'll see some things there for sure.
I-19.
Cool. So, Cloud Shell. That's one other thing I want to mention on Cloud Shell. File upload and download capabilities with Cloud Shell. And hey, underneath the hood, that's just Kubernetes, right? That's just an instance, which looks to be persistent from at least the little bit of research I've done there. So if anybody has time to do that at some point, I think that'd be cool to see, could you forensically connect to that instance that that is powering Cloud Shell to figure out everything that was going on there. I think you might be able to. So that might be a cool research project for somebody out there.
071.
But watch for those file uploads. Watch for those file downloads. Instance profile replacement, right? So oftentimes they want to get back into the environment. What's a great way to do that? Well, just make sure all the EC2 instances that are there have an overly permissive role. Replace instance profile, gets them there. They're not doing anything smart here, usually creating their own policy first, and it's a star policy. If you're looking for star policies, you're going to see that. Early on, they used to like to create new users, create new access keys. Don't do that anymore. Now they just do a get logon profile on everybody, and people who don't have a logon profile already, just go add one. Give them a password. That's how you assign a password in AWS. So give it a password, and now you take over that account instead, or that identity, rather than having to spin up new ones that may cause some noise.
N31.
Let's talk about defense evasion on AWS side. First thing I guess everybody thinks of, disable guard duty. One way, I guess the common way most people do that, delete detector, right? So I think everyone in the world has a rule for that at this point. I don't know why they bothered disabling guard duty, to be honest. It wasn't really catching much that what they're doing. It was more noisy to disable guard duty than to leave it running. But they do delete guard duty or remove guard duty in a unique way. They always do delete invitations, always do disassociate from master as well. Those are removing it from the org and making it hard to add it back in to the org as well from a guard duty stance. So interesting. I hardly ever see anyone do delete invitations outside of decommissioning AWS accounts entirely. So another good one to watch out for. They do a stop logging. Attackers think stop logging does a whole lot more than it actually does. I'm sure you guys know this too, right? It's not stopping logging. It's just not going to send it anywhere. So if you're hitting the API, you're not dead in the water. You can still get all these events.
G56.
All right. And let's do another one too. Maybe a couple more.
G49.
Sweet. All right. So that is what they're doing on the defense evasion side. We got a minute left, so I'm going to have him read out two more, and then we're going to talk about completing the mission.
I-25.
All right, so completing the mission. Data theft is often the goal. It is for this group, especially for extortion purposes. They also did a bit of resource hijacking, which I was surprised. It seemed like almost like an afterthought to them. The data theft stuff, we won't get too much into that. If you don't have data plane logging, it's hard to see. but it's not impossible. I think everyone here knows kind of workarounds there. So heads up on that side. EC2 stuff, pretty cool. Enabling serial and then connecting via EC2 Instance Connect over serial sometimes, sometimes directly connecting via SSH. Often creating really large EC2 instances, C5, AD, X large boxes, $50 an hour boxes, and putting Windows on them. Nobody puts Windows on boxes that big. Stack your, stack all of your EC2 instance creations, and you'll see some ones that stand out from that instance.
N45.
Keep going.
B3.
Awesome. Hey, we released some tooling to help out. Cloud Console Cartographer. I think you guys might have seen how that helps when you're analyzing console sessions. Makes it, those 100 events that happen every time you click Create Bucket, collapse it into one thing. So check that out. And then Cloud Grappler has a lot of the event level detections for detecting this type of stuff in your own environments. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ian, for that talk. We have time for about 1 or 2 questions. Any questions in the room? Feel free to go ahead.
Can you call out N55?
N55. Bingo! Hey! Yeah. Hey. All right. Any other questions?
You have another one for N37?
You got it. Back there. If you're one away, raise your hand, and we'll give them out as much as we have.
So I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
When you're looking at these search terms from the thing there, is there anything that surprises you? You talked about the snowflake ones. I saw AKIA and a number of different keys in there. Is there any patterns in there that you've never seen before that surprised you?
The code signing stuff, they really like code signing certs for extortion. You can get a lot of money if somebody thinks they have you have their code signing certs. That's pretty unique to this group. I don't see a lot of other folks going after that. So when you start seeing somebody looking for sign tool /L, things like that, pretty interesting to see there. Everything else is pretty cookie cutter though. They're looking for credentials, just kind of like how I guess any red teamer would probably want to do it.
One last question for the room.
All right, so when they're connecting to the environments, are they using some sort of VPN? Are they using specific VPNs or VPSs, or are they going internal through AWS or GCP? I mean, how are they connecting to your environments and then?
Yeah, so hey, here's the great part, right? They log into your identity provider, and what they have is a menu of options in front of them to complete their mission. They're not doing a whole lot of work here. They're just like, oh, I have access to 5 different AWS accounts. That one says management, click. Go into the management, right? And then once they're in, AWS is only a small part of this story, and I didn't touch the Azure cloud portion either, but they're just gonna opportunistically look for what you're spending money on and things for data theft there. So they don't have to do a whole lot of, they have the right credentials to be able to kind of see whatever they want to see most of the time in these environments. Yeah.
Thank you very much. One more round of applause for Ian.
Thanks, everybody.